G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Rebecca Dixon from the gameHERs, based in New York, United States of America. Thanks for your time today, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Shannon Ferguson from Fan Saves, who I had on episode 174, suggested you'd be a great guest to come on the cast.
Yeah, I was so happy when Shannon introduced us. Shannon and I met in this past summer of 2021. Both of our companies were accepted into the Tampa Bay Wave, the startup accelerator, and we were in the tech diversity cohort. So it was a really incredible experience, 15 tech startups, and I think Fan Saves and the gameHERs. We connected on a lot of levels. First of all, Shannon has been a real leader and mentor sort of in the startup world. And also both of us we kind of touch the sports world a little bit, which I can get into when we get into the details about our company, but we had a lot to learn from each other. And so I'm thrilled that she introduced me to you.
Great. Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear about your business. It sounds like Shannon's business. It's a unique one.
Yeah, it is very unique. And would you like me to give you a little bit of the background of it now?
Yeah, well, that's the next question. Tell the audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Perfect. The gameHERs is a community, a media platform, and has become a little bit of a lifestyle brand for women who game and women who work in the gaming space. And we launched in March of 2020. And what we found is women are, and this is a statistic that you can analyze it a few different ways, but most commonly is quoted as 48% of gamers worldwide are women.
Wow. And did not know that.
Yeah. So that is the reaction that most people have. And we thought, that doesn't seem to be, for many reasons. So my co-founders and I have got three co-founders. We have experience in building community, particularly around women and monetizing it. We had a company before this that we sold. So we did a deep dive into the industry, found out that statistic is true. So we decided to do it again. We launched in March of 2020. We started building a community, and the monetization around it is, there are many still emerging opportunities even as we grow. But we've got an app that ultimately will have a number of ways to monetize it through subscription and in-app purchases. We have a lot of potential ways that brands and organizations can work with us to reach women who game, because the number of women who game is high, and women are, often the purchasers. And so that's it. We've been really floored with the response from the industry and from gamers to join our community and get us off to a really good start.
The other amazing thing about your business is the industry is huge. Gaming, there's more sales in gaming, I read this about 10 years ago, than the movie industry.
More than the movie industry and the music industry combined times 2.
Wow.
It is unbelievable.
How did you start out?
Well, so I mentioned that we had a company before this, and we sold our company. It was in the parenting space, so completely different business.
When did you start that one?
And we sold that. Pardon?
Sorry, when did you start that one up?
Actually, that's for a whole other podcast. But we started it as a very grassroots, local New York City based company. Before, even in 2006 is the answer.
Yep.
But before social media was even a thing, really grew with the digital, the evolution of digital communication. Heather and I both were sitting right alongside the gaming industry, and we kind of couldn't believe it. So we continued to dig deeper in research, and we found that, that statistic was true. We said, does anybody care? Is anybody paying attention to the fact that women are actually half of gamers, but that percentage doesn't seem, it shocks everybody. It's not reflected anywhere. And so what exists to deal with that? Is there a community for women? Is there media around this to try to, shed light on it? And we found, first of all, of course, people cared. There were and still are a lot of women in the industry, maybe not enough, but certainly some, who were doing all the things they could do, mentor and speak on panels on women in gaming. And we also found a lot of nonprofits writing white papers and creating scholarships and trying to, support job creation for women. What we didn't find is what we built, really a community that could come together, use each other as support, and, use each other as community. And then as the community was built, the idea is that it's a community as media, as an influencer, as an entity that can kind of give, again, shine light on the topic. And, a lot of the narrative around women in gaming, as it should be, is around the toxicity in gaming and the harassment that women experience. And we certainly talk about that too, because it exists. What we do and did find, though, is that the main thing that the women that we interviewed, which before we launched, we interviewed, focus groups, surveyed, and luckily met because it was right before COVID. The main thing they wanted to talk about was all of the positives that gaming had provided for them, whether it be community building, help in, reaching friends, the connection between STEM and STEAM. There are countless examples. One of our partners is the Center for Suicide Awareness. Gaming is one of the tools they use to combat mental health. Right. So they're just, and I mean, that's just one example. NASA uses gaming, of course, schools and education. So we talk about a lot of that. And as the community came together, then we looked back to the community to ask them how we should grow. And we partnered with our fourth co-founder, Verda, who has a long career in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work across a lot of different organizations. She's worked with the Gates Foundation, the New York City Board of Ed, and everything in between. So when you talk about women in gaming, you're also talking about all marginalized genders, all marginalized communities, women, femme-identifying gamers. And so it was really important for us right from the start to make the conversation about that. We lead with women because, it's in our name, because it's a little bit easier to sort of get everybody's attention with kind of the big statistic, which is women are 48% of gamers. But Verda was the perfect fourth co-founder. We're just, again, that's how we started. And we've pretty much experienced continuous growth since then. So we're so excited.
Yeah, great. We'll talk about numbers next. But so you started almost 2 years ago now. And mm-hmm. So how old were you when you started this up?
How old? I'm sorry. How old was I?
Yeah.
Like my age?
Yes.
43.
43. Great.
Yes.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last 2 years?
Sure. Some highlights are we have across all of our different platforms, which include a variety of, the majority of the social media networks and an app that we developed. We have 500,000 women in our community.
Awesome.
So that's our community number.
Yep.
We started getting revenue in 2021, and we started getting revenue at the end of 2021. So it is, growing as we speak. We're 2 years old. And so year over year growth is looking like it's going to be, like 10x, but we just started right at the tail end. And what are some other fun numbers? We had the gameHERs Awards is what really put us on the map. I can tell you about that later, but it's an awards show where we honored women. The first year we had 25 awards. The next year we had 38. The first year we had 600 nominations and 72,000 votes. And the next year we had 150,000 votes.
Jeez,
so
wow.
It was, yeah, it's a testament to the fact that it's not that the gamers weren't there, it's that no one was bringing light to them.
Yeah, great. And what about the number of team members you started with 2 years ago and we're at now?
Sure.
Full-time equivalent.
We started with the equivalent of 2 full-time, and we are up to the equivalent of 10.
Yep, great. I noticed on your website, you've got a team of 17 plus your 4 co-founders, and Todd is the only token male in there. Is that right?
We have a late breaking second male who has joined our team.
Yeah, great. And when was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
It's so hard to identify one because they happen a lot in different ways. But I think when the first big moment was when we launched the gameHERs Awards that I just mentioned. That was honestly a tactic to really do what we said we were going to do, amplify women in the gaming space, meaning both just gamers and also women in the gaming industry. But also at the same time, it was a tool to get our brand, out there and respected, so then that we could do more of the first. And when we launched the Gamer Awards, they went viral instantly.
Yep.
In terms of social media traction and also just number of votes. It was a number of nominations. We just kept refreshing, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
But that was probably the first moment. But we have a lot of things that happen just constantly. I mean, the other day I was on a call with somebody who just graduated from college, and we just launched our collegiate Discord, an additional Discord for the college space. And so I was talking to her about that, and she was tearful because she was tearful because her experience in college had, resonated a lot with a lot of the things we were talking about. She would have loved to have had had sort of what we're offering when she was in college. And then it was also like joy that she was a part of this. And so that, gosh, as a professional, creating something for a community of people, that was an example of a big moment.
What does success look like to you?
For me, success, I think it's funny because one answer to that question for our company would be to be so successful that we don't need to exist anymore. But on the other hand, I do think that women like to come together in community. That being said, we have women, femme-identifying, and actually also all allies. Anybody is welcome in our community. So that's not the answer that we actually give. Mm-hmm. I think success is just that. Certainly, from a business perspective, we want to stay in business, right? Yep. We're a company. We're very intentionally a for-profit. At the beginning, a lot of people thought we were a nonprofit, and we felt that this challenge around women in gaming, it was big enough that it needed a for-profit kind of media platform that could be invested into creating the community and then building it and sharing it. So I think success to me, number one, looks like growing a very strong, succeeding business with a solid revenue stream year over year for our investors. And we are a for-purpose for-profit. So I think on a mission level, success to me looks like we're a situation where we're not having to sort of report on the challenges and navigating it, but just more a platform where we're talking about women in gaming and what they can bring to each other and just a community to come together.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Networking. I think I am a really, really big believer in the power of people. And so, of course, I majored in math in college, so I am also a numbers person, and you have to look at the bottom line. That's what it's about. But I think that behind every bottom line is people. So networking.
And well, you launched this business really, just as COVID was kicking off. So in person,
the same week.
Yeah.
The week that COVID shut down the US, it was our launch.
Right. So in-person networking wasn't really that possible the last 2 years, but over your career, you're saying networking is a big part of marketing.
So interesting question. Yes, over my career, networking has been, but networking shifted over the last 2 years, and I can tell you some specific tools I use. So, and this may be industry specific, but we launched a company in a business that none of the founders were, endemic. We weren't endemic to that business, to that industry. And that was something that was continuously, we were told a lot that would be a challenge because the gaming industry is a young industry, even though it's big. And historically, most people in the industry were gamers and grew up being hard gamers. And a lot of people in the industry still are.
Yep.
I mean, and I game with my children. I'm a gamer, but I'm not a hardcore, kind of gamer.
Yep.
So I went to networking right away. LinkedIn was a huge tool.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to use it because it's a skill, which I didn't know it was. And I use it to this day. I'll direct message people, as long as I've got a relevant reason. Also things like the way I met Shannon, participating in accelerators.
Yep.
Here's the power of networking. Shannon introduced you to me, and because I trust Shannon so much, I was immediately excited before I even read about your podcast. Of course, then I read about it and I was even more excited. But and here I am, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, great. And how did you fund your business? So it sounded like you've got investors on board.
Yes. So it was self-funded at first, and very, very, very early on, we got overwhelming feedback from our community that one of the biggest pain points for women who game is finding each other.
Yep.
So we immediately, almost immediately, decided to develop an app, which we didn't have funding for. So at that same time, you mentioned that we launched right around the beginning of COVID. We also launched right before the social justice movement got a lot of momentum. And also at that time, the gaming industry had a resurgence of the Me Too movement. So after all that, Riot Games was experiencing some pretty serious PR challenges, and they committed $20 million to women and diverse founded companies in the gaming space. So we just, again, speaking of networking, we just reached out to them. And we got some funding.
That's great.
And then we also did a family and friends round, and then we completed a seed raise at the end of last year. And we will, because of the success of our app, now we want to market it even more. So we will be doing a Series A later this year.
Great, that's wonderful. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yes, I would. I think that our industry there are very many opportunities to start a successful business. There are also a lot of new businesses in our industry. It's almost like if you're in the esports and gaming industry, you are a startup.
Yep.
Because the industry is young, other than, the game publishers pretty much. So yes, I would start my business if I had unlimited funding. And I think there are a lot of other really fascinating businesses. So yes.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, I think you mentioned before that we went from the equivalent of 2 to 10 full-time team members. And the biggest challenge, and it's been a positive challenge because it's human related. So I've been enjoying working through it, but it's a challenge, is that as you're thinking about teams and who's going to go where and who's going to do what, and skill sets and time and all of this, there are also it's human beings behind each role. And
Yep.
so it's really, it's a challenge to figure out not what only will work best, but who will work best together. What do they want? What will make them the happiest? Because if you create a culture where it's a positive environment and everybody feels like they're valued, which is something I certainly want to do, then it's going to be better for the humans involved and better for the business. That's something that takes a lot of time. And it's not a negative thing at all. It's positive. It's just something I didn't know before I built a team from 2 to 10 people in 2 years.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Definitely fundraising, because I've never done a capital raise before, and neither had anybody on my team. And so also a very positive experience, because like I mentioned at the beginning, I was 43 when we started, and the world of doing capital raises it's like learning a new language.
Yep.
So, but that's been the biggest learning, but it's been super interesting.
Yeah, it's harder and takes a lot longer than what a lot of people think before they get into this part of growing a business.
For sure. And I think that, now that I look back on the raising that we've done and I think about the future, if I picture myself in the first investor meeting we ever had, it's embarrassing, but also everybody has a first meeting.
Yeah.
How can you can't know till you do it.
That's it. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
The thing I've enjoyed the least is I don't sleep enough. And it probably sounds funny to say that, but it's a startup that is growing really quickly. The to-do list is never done. And so it's all about prioritizing, and it's very hard to prioritize when you're a client-driven business, a community-driven business, basically a social network, because more or less that's one way you could kind of describe us.
Yep.
So we don't turn off, and so I don't sleep enough. I've got 3 young kids, but that's not even the reason why.
That's the business. It's the 4th kid. Yeah. What do you love most about growing a small business?
The energy, the learning. I mentioned learning about fundraising. I've also learned about a completely new industry. I've learned about growing a team of people, and every day is something new.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think the biggest mindset shift is it happened early on, right after we saw the possibility for growth. And that is that we launched our company thinking it would be a small sort of part-time, sending a newsletter, doing a podcast, having a social media presence, and bringing women who game together. And as we have gotten into it, all of these things have happened at the same time. COVID, the social justice movement, and gaming is experiencing this moment in time where 87% of Gen Z games, basically, it's almost 100% of Gen Alpha games. So then what does gaming even mean? It's everything. So our brand can be relevant to everybody. So it's all about life and the lifestyle and where gaming fits into that. And so that mindset shift, it was a mindset shift because it meant we weren't just a small newsletter-based community, but we had the potential to be something really big. And that's what we're on the road to doing. And it's been incredible, but a big mindset shift.
Yeah. And so if you're at 500,000 in the community now, what's your projection? You must get to 1 million by mid this year or later this year?
Yeah, definitely. And what we're always analyzing is how our community interacts on each different platform and where we want to focus on the most. Our app is in its infancy. It just launched, right, and it's doing great. We love it. And the app users love it. And of course, it's also expensive to market an app, because speaking of learnings, what we learned is that if you have an app that's working great, the fastest and most efficient way to grow it is by investing in it. So I think, yes, definitely 1 million by the end of the year before that. And we're very cognizant of the importance of, yes, growth and engagement, and within the community they're pretty much equally important. Because if we just grow without that, then we're not valuable.
Yeah. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think prioritization of, like, on a daily basis. What do I have to get done today? And what do I have to get done this week? And what do I have to get done this month? And if, always keeping those priorities in mind helps with that to-do list I mentioned that kind of impedes on the sleep.
Yeah, I think that is a great habit. Love that saying, if everything is a priority, then nothing is. And business owners can feel overwhelmed by just the length of that to-do list. So you've really got to draw a line under it and say, this is all I can achieve in this week or this day or this quarter, and focus on that and not worry about everything below that line, because we're always going to have shitloads to do.
It's so true. It really is.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Definitely. We add people to our team. Our number one strategy is to look within our own community, because we have, first of all, there's a big overlap in our industry between gamers and people in the gaming industry, people who would like to work in the gaming industry. And also one of our goals is to help facilitate that progression of getting women more jobs. So that's one first place that we've looked. We also, certainly try to reach out to our own networks, but we also try to broadly broadcast jobs, because by nature of our mission, we believe in having a team that represents our diversity goals, and just the fact that we want to make sure that we're reflecting everybody in our community. So I think we tried to get as organized as possible by putting job descriptions together, sharing them. It depends, of course, on what the job is, but sharing them with, whether it's colleges or different Discord groups in the gaming world, and certainly, again, LinkedIn.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth? Yeah,
that's a good one, because we've only existed during COVID, and it's hard. I think so. A few things we've done, and I honestly can only speak to culture in a remote company, because that's what we are. I think that having the balance of team meetings that are short and respectful of people's time, but also, like, you can do a really quick kind of fun icebreaker that's like, say, 3 things, and what's your favorite ice cream? And it seems so awkward at first, and then it's like funny for some reason. Slack has been a big culture builder for us. It took a while because some people love Slack and some people don't. But eventually, if you start talking about personal things, whatever shared interest kind of bubble to the top. So, super stereotypical. But when I started doing research on how to build culture in Slack, one of the biggest things that came back right away was like, talk about sports in Slack. And I mean, I love sports. A couple of our team members do too. Some of them don't. So, pets, whatever. We just started kind of chatting in different channels, posting funny memes. It sounds forced at first, and it sounds forced at first because it is, but it eventually worked.
It gets its own momentum. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Work-life balance.
Yeah.
I do handle it moderately. I have my schedule is, I really like to get up early in the mornings. And one reason I do is because that's time when I can, do things like yoga and meditating and returning some emails and whatever the things that I want to get done to feel balanced before the day starts.
Yep.
I'm not saying everybody should wake up early, but for me, that's time I can protect. I think I have heard so many strategies, some of which I implement well. And my New Year's resolution this year, which is working like moderately well, is to put white space on my calendar. So, whether that means like 25-minute meetings instead of 30 or 45-minute meetings instead of an hour. It sounds so crazy, but if you have to click out of a Zoom into a Zoom, you're just going to be late everywhere. And it's tricky. So the white space, protecting time, for me, it's in the morning. I think if you can, again, find the times of day that you're not productive, so for me, sometimes that's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I've gotten up early, and then plan something then that is not work related. That's a good thing for me. So whether it's picking up my kids from school, it's hard though. I mean, it is hard. And I think the other thing for balance that's been really helpful is to talk to other startup founders and share the challenge of that, because if it's your startup, you can't get it out of your brain. I mean, you're thinking about it all the time.
Yeah, that's it.
So meditating. I mean, honestly, it's good.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
I mean, as much as possible, but what I will also say is there's so many resources now where the only investment is time.
Yep.
So again, LinkedIn has a lot of good ones. In my industry, there are a lot of networking groups. Trade associations can be good. Reading. Even one thing I think for professional development that I do is follow certain people in my industry and even reach out to them. I consider that professional development too.
Yep. Yeah. And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I have not had an official mentor or coach, but I have had mentors who I've identified or who that we have kind of evolved into, where I'll meet with them on a somewhat routine basis. And some of those have been people who have now, in a more formal way, joined our advisory board.
Yep. Yeah, well, that was the next question. If you had a board of directors or advisory board, how big is that board and how often do they meet?
Our advisory board has 6 people on it, or 5 people on it outside of our company, and then 4 co-founders. And we meet 5 times a year.
Yep. And does someone chair that board? Is it one of the independents?
No, actually. So we have, that's just an advisory board, and I usually run that meeting.
Yeah.
We also do have a board, which is which at this point we're just setting up a board to be prepared for our Series A. So we're starting to meet. We meet every month.
Yep.
It's our lead investor, and then everybody else is internal, and we are having an agenda and minutes each month. Yeah. To be ready for the kind of real board.
You're one of the few that we've had on that's exited a business. Can you tell our audience, any advice you'd give, anything you do differently, knowing now what you know, getting ready for an exit?
Yep, I will. Our exit, so it's interesting. Our former company, it was a great experience to have. We learned a lot about community building, and we got it to the point where we could sell it. That being said, our former company was bootstrapped and a lot smaller. So we sold it to a media company in the New York area. We were ready to sell it because we had been doing it for a while. I mentioned that we launched in 2006. We sold it in 2016. And so while we navigated the movement online and digitally, and we were just ready for a new challenge. And so we identified 3 top companies that we thought would be potential, interested buyers, and we approached them all. And then it took about a year of a lot of meetings and a lot of due diligence and a lot of back and forth. And with a bootstrapped company, we had revenue from day one in that company, and which is why we were able to continue it for so long, supported by ads on our various platforms. And then also we had a matchmaking connection for parents and caregivers.
Yep.
But it's not like we didn't have investors. And so the selling was a little bit different. But yeah, I would just say research, look at your kind of competitors, and it was a great experience. It also has made conversations easier in fundraising. So that's a great reason to be able to have that.
Absolutely. And did you have to clean the business up much ready for sale, like internal operations? And
we didn't have to clean it up much. We just had to take kind of like our Excel, note keeping and make it look a little bit nicer, because it was a very small team.
Yep.
That being said, we had everything. It was just putting it in a format that maybe somebody external would like to look at. With this company, we're already big enough internally where we've had to do that just for internal purposes.
Yeah.
So I would certainly recommend doing that from the start. But on the other hand, when you're starting in a startup at the very beginning, you're just doing what you can. So.
Yep. Right, Rebecca, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think the hardest thing is that we touched on it before. You get caught up in the minutia and the to-do list and wanting to make sure that you don't miss anything. So return emails and call everybody back. Sometimes I think the hardest thing is just like taking a breath, take a breath of fresh air, make sure that you're also thinking and reading and knowing like what's going on in my industry, not just my little business, to make sure that what you're growing is what you should be growing.
Favorite business book, which has helped you the most?
My favorite business book is actually Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek, I like that book, but he wrote one called Tribe of Mentors.
Yep. And
he interviewed, I think, 200 people who have had successes in a variety of different areas on what, a whole bunch of questions, some of the same questions you're asking: favorite books, tools for what work-life balance. And I actually read, I'm finished with it, but I was reading one a day just for kind of inspiration. And it's really interesting to see some of the themes across them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Podcasts, I mostly listen to very industry-specific podcasts. And for me, that was important because I was learning about a new industry. I do like, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it, but I bet I'm sure you know it probably. It's Guy Raz's podcast on, I'll tell you to you in 1 second. Yes. Professional development. We just try to streamline internally
how I built this.
Tools. Yeah, how I built this. Guy Raz, How I Built This. Yeah, that's such a good podcast. Professional. Did you say tools?
Any podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own
online learning tools. I don't have any online learning tools. That's a great podcast, though.
Yeah. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think the tool for us, and it sounds boring, and I already mentioned it, but it has been Slack.
Yep.
Slack streamlined our communication. It was such a shift. I'm 45, so I wanted to stick to email.
Yeah, and me too.
Yeah, I mean, you can't when there's too much going on. Slack changed the world for us.
Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
On day one of starting out, if I could tell myself anything, it would be prioritize what you need to get done today. It really would. What do you need to get done today? And don't worry too much about the rest, and then go to sleep.
Great. Well, thanks very much for your time, Rebecca. That's you've already had one successful exit from 2006 to 2016, and then launching this business not even 2 years ago. 2 full-time equivalents to now 10, massively growing community, 500,000, which you should top out, get to 1 million before the end of this year. So congratulations to you, your co-founders, and the wider team for the success so far. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.